this is Quinn Bailey,
Max Corman.
and you are listening to the Reverse Shot Podcast.
So last night we went out and saw Live by Night,
The new movie by Ben Affleck.
Screenplay by Ben Affleck.
Produced by Ben Affleck, and starring Ben Affleck.
This was the newest of Ben Affleck's directorial debuts. Or not debuts, directorial movies. Yeah, he doesn't do a first movie every time. No.
This is his, fourth or fifth
Gone
first
Baby
movie.
Gone, Argo.
The Town, I think.
The Town, so yeah, fourth, I'm guessing.
This is his first movie.
Yeah,
and
wow, Ben Affleck loves Boston. This, of course,
I know it didn't really have a lot of time in Boston, did it? Because most
Just
of
the
it was
beginning.
in Florida.
I'm just thinking of Ben Affleck in general. He seems like a lot of his stuff is in Boston. Anyway, oh yeah, that's right. His next movie is going to be Witness for the Prosecution. Oh yeah, after Batman. Can't wait for Witness for the Prosecution.
That's going to be interesting.
But
I haven't seen the original. I want to see the original.
Oh, dude, it's amazing. But anyway, Live by Night is getting kind of
mixed review, mostly
mixed
negative.
to negative. It's getting shit on by critics.
It's getting a lot of really bad reviews by critics, and I'm going to be honest here. I don't get it. This is actually a really good movie.
No, this is I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I think that I don't get why this was a January dumping ground movie.
It comes out the same week as The Bye Bye Man, and it gets beat at the box office by The Bye Bye Man.
Poor Ben Affleck. It's like, hey, you know that new movie, your new passion project that you did the screenplay for and directed and starred in? Yeah, it's being beaten by The Bye Bye Man. It's like, oh, that's just like out of all the movies to be beaten by The Bye Bye Man.
That's just sad.
Poor Ben. He's having a bad year with BVS, Batman vs Superman.
I wonder if some of the criticism is sort of left over from Batman vs Superman. I wonder if there's still animosity towards him after that.
I don't know. There does seem to be a bit of a Ben Affleck hate bandwagon going on now. I personally think I love his movies. He's
pretty good.
It's hard to not to like, though. He's so charismatic. But anything the Affleck brothers do, I'll watch. Manchester by the Sea was my favorite movie last year, and that was Casey Affleck's starring in it. He didn't direct it, but still.
So this movie, anyways, so we've already told our opinion. This is a fairly good movie. So what this is that this movie is a kind of archetypal gangster film. A little bit. We're going to get into what I mean later, because there's some interesting things they do with the genre. So our story, which is based on a novel by Dennis Lehane,
I love him.
Follows
Gotta love him.
Ben Affleck as Joe Coughlin, this Irish-American former veteran who starts the movie out as a bank robber, essentially, trying to earn money to skip town with the wife of the boss of the Irish mob. And at the same time, he's being courted by both the Irish mob and the Italian mob. And then he's essentially found out that he is having an affair with the head of the Irish mob's girlfriend. He gets the living daylights beaten out of him. His girlfriend almost killed. His girlfriend presumably dies in a car crash. And then, as an act of revenge, he takes a job with the Italian mafia and is sent down to Florida to take over the rum business and essentially push the Irish mafia out. And from there, it sort of proceeds in an almost episodic structure with a series of different little stories happening one after the other that kind of tie into this bigger narrative of Ben Affleck building up the presence of the Italian mob down in Florida and eventually seeking to get revenge on the Irish mafia.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like almost a condensed TV show in the sense that was like
it's episodic.
Yeah, it's like it starts out as revenge, and then he goes down to Florida, and then it's like forgotten about for the longest time, and it goes on to other deals.
One of the problems with this movie, I'm going to admit, I really like this movie, but it has some big problems. One of the big problems is that the episodic structure leads to a lot of conflicts having a very rushed ending. That they'll spend a good amount of time getting into these conflicts, only for the end of them to come very suddenly so they can move on to the next sort of episode.
Like one of our favorite parts of this movie was...
One of the best parts of this movie. So there are essentially 5 episodes. I think we should go through them in order. So our first episode is essentially Affleck as a criminal in Boston, and it's pretty good. It feels a little bit like his other films.
A little rushed, but it's good.
It's very much a Ben Affleck crime film, something like The Town.
It started out giving me a lot. It started out. One of my problems with some gangster films is they often give you so much information it's hard to follow, and I was afraid that this was what this movie would be, and
it drops you into the middle of things.
There's
a whole scene that's basically Ben Affleck saying, "By the way, I'm sleeping with the girlfriend of the head of the Irish mob."
Yeah, and they just give you a lot of detail about the world, and then I thought, oh no, I won't be able to follow this, but then I was, and it wasn't that confusing at all.
So yeah, the start of the movie is a little bit rushed. I think it's probably one of the weaker parts of the film. That it gets more interesting as it goes on, but there's some good stuff in it. There's a really
great
good
car
opening.
chase. Great car chase in it.
There is a fantastic car chase.
The action in this movie is great.
The action, here's the thing. I didn't know Affleck could shoot action very well because he hasn't necessarily done a lot of action in his previous. I mean, I think he did it in The Town. I haven't seen much of The Town. I've seen part of it, but Affleck can really shoot action. It's very clear and coherent, but there's a sort of energy to it. It's pretty well done.
Yeah,
he likes to use a lot of pretty cool tracking shots. There are a lot of really good one takes in this film.
This was the second movie we saw since The Bye-Bye Man in a row that had one of the opening shots be a one take. It wasn't the very first shot, but it was one of the first shots.
I think it was a third or fourth.
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't super complex, but it's just connection to The Bye-Bye Man, same movie.
So anyways, the first, let's say, episode is a little rushed. It has some really effective moments. The first real fight in the movie is brutal because it's just one-sided. Affleck gets just the living daylights beaten out of him, and it's absolutely brutal.
People who don't like Batman vs. Superman were just in euphoria. They're like, now we feel redeemed.
If you did not like Batman vs. Superman, you get to see Irish mobsters beating the living daylights out of Ben Affleck in this movie, so I think that will make you happy.
Yeah.
So anyways, after this episode, we get Affleck kind of moving down to Florida in our second episode. Second episode is kind of a little exposition heavy, but it's got some interesting things in it. I think this is the episode for me where this film turns a little subversive, I'd say.
So, which what do you mean episode? Which episode?
So it's essentially after he takes the job at the Italian Mafia and he first goes down to Florida and sort of starts working in Tampa.
All right.
Where he essentially meets the people running the rum business, falls in love with Zoe Saldana, who plays his wife in this film. Spoilers.
It's not really I guess it's a spoiler.
And sort of starts to take power, and then some interesting things start to happen. First of all, the movie kind of slows down more, and then it sort of starts to subvert the gangster film. So, here's what I mean. So the gangster movie tends to be a lot about loyalty and systems of order, and how if you defy those systems of order, you're essentially screwed. A lot of them are about this family and how you stick to this family and not go against this family and listen to them. And Live by Night kind of hates that. It's, to some degree, Affleck's character is fairly anti-authoritarian. Even when he's working for the Italian Mafia, he insists that he doesn't really need to follow their orders. He doesn't believe that people... Because it's part of his backstory. His backstory is that he was a soldier in World War I, and that he's essentially angry about the conflict he saw and doesn't want to have people forced to take orders from someone they don't want to take orders from.
He was very much a Michael Corleone type character.
Kind of pre-corruption Michael Corleone.
That's what I meant.
And he kind of stays that way. And he's also kind of weirdly progressive for a mobster, because he talks a lot about, he stands up a lot to sort of more people who are more racist or bigoted, and essentially at the start of the movie, he goes to Zoe Saldana and her brother, who are the Cubans running the rum trade at the moment, and basically says, I know you're dealing to the Irish, we're going to offer you a better deal, but most importantly, we're going to treat you like human beings. And that's something that becomes an overtone throughout the film, that it's basically undoing these sort of archetypes of the mafia, and you see a lot of the real cultural attitudes at the time. Because this film is very clear about the fact that racism and sexism were institutional at that time. It's interesting because in the dialogue, they just will drop racial slurs left and right. You see in a lot of these movies that whenever they drop a racial slur, there is usually a pause or a sting or something to say, oh, somebody did this. They just come. Because this is the time that this film takes place in. It's ugly. It's pretty clear about the ugliness of the time, and I think that's kind of subversive in its own way.
And yeah, that leads to so part of the racism comes from the KKK,
which is the best part of the movie. The third episode is Ben Affleck and mobsters versus the Ku Klux Klan, and it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, so they set it up almost like it's a conspiracy theory movie. It's like, we have people everywhere. We have a judge. Just just so you know, you don't know who's working for you and who's working for the KKK. So I'm like, wow, this is going to be intense. But it gets resolved a little too much too quickly
part of the
through
movie.
Exposition.
Because the best part of the movie essentially gets resolved in 2 minutes. Right after this moment where you think, okay, they just killed a KKK member. Now the KKK is going to come after him. Ben Affleck is basically saying, nope, we killed the KKK and basically destroyed their presence in Florida. Okay, bye.
What would you call that? Part 3 of the movie?
Part 3. For me, there were 5 distinct episodes.
And with the 4th one, I'm guessing, was the priest. The
preacher.
Yeah,
so
preacher.
Earlier in this movie, Elle Fanning plays the local sheriff's daughter who ends up going to Hollywood involved with pornography and drugs.
Yeah, I really wish we got more time with her character, because you see her in one scene, then she goes off to L.A., and then bam, she's hooked on drugs and is
doing pornography, and then she comes back and bam, she's a preacher speaking out against gambling, which is a problem for Affleck, because he's trying to essentially build a casino in Florida for the mob after the war's over, and he's getting orders from his boss to kill her, and it turns into an interesting ethical drama, which is really helped by the fact that Elle Fanning in this movie is phenomenal. I'm going to go all in and say that Elle Fanning delivers my favorite performance in this whole movie.
Yeah, probably. She's not in it a whole lot.
But what she's phenomenal.
Slightly eerie but so interesting to watch. And
she has this really... I think what she does well between this and Super 8, which is another performance I love by her, is she plays a lot of very haunted seeming roles. Whatever role she plays seems to have this larger backstory, this darker story behind it that she just can deliver with only her eyes and face, and it's a fascinating kind of archetype that I see her play, and she's really good at it.
Yeah, her character is. You can have a whole movie devoted to her. She's a very rich character, very very interesting to watch. And Ben Affleck's relationship with her shows his kind of... So in the movie, he does do a sort of Michael Corleone type thing where, the tagline of the movie is Joe is once a good man, because he is starting to do these awful things for revenge and to help his thing.
But it kind of doesn't go in that direction.
Yeah, it kind of does a Godfather 3, where it's now he's trying to redeem himself a little, even if it will hurt his empire.
And it does... Okay, it is a little contradictory, I will admit, that, okay, you're trying to redeem yourself, but you've already killed about, 50 people already? Okay. It's a little contradictory, though.
Yeah, well... And then, there's the last part or two where...
Which goes into a full action movie.
Do you include the last... Because there's 3 endings to this movie. It goes on a little.
Lord of the Rings syndrome.
Exactly. I didn't mind it that much. I was never bored. But I can almost include that as its own... You're calling it them episodes, so I would call it...
I'd say there was an epilogue and a final episode, which I'd say is where it just turns into a John Woo movie.
Yeah, Ben Affleck's diving across the bed, shooting 2 guns, and it is
and
awesome.
Then there's a guy shooting Then a guy pushes a man down a flight of stairs, and as he's falling past all the stairs, he's still shooting him. It turns into a completely ridiculous action movie.
But it's
fun one.
It never feels like too cartoonish against the darkness of the other movie.
That's an interesting thing, because it mixes all these tones, but it does so fluidly. It's a film that alternates between being a lot of things, and despite some issues, I'd say, with the plot, does them fairly well. The structure almost reminds me... There's a movie you need to see called The Roaring Twenties. Not The Bye Bye Man. The Roaring Twenties by Raoul Walsh. It's I saw it for the first time over winter break. It's a pretty fantastic gangster movie that feels a lot like this one, and that it's very episodic. It's quickly paced, that it spends more time on moments that add to the plot than it does on the plot itself. And I'd say this reminds me a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Roaring Twenties yet.
Very good movie.
Yeah, I would watch it. If we're talking about I was just in art cinema last year, and we were talking about subversive gangster films, and also archetypal gangster films, like the Concrete Jungle. But that's neither here nor there. I just think that's funny that we're talking about the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I think this just really interestingly plays with the archetypes of the genre. That it's weird that a lot of critics have been reading this as, for me, archetypal, because it does use a lot of those archetypes.
No, it's completely predictable. I saw every twist and turn happening, but
I don't mind that.
I was always like, it was like, you watch a movie for the third time. It's like, yeah, you know what's going to happen. Doesn't mean it's the worst movie. It's shot beautifully. It still has twists, even though you don't. Even
you can
if you
see what's
expect
coming, but I think sometimes, like, there's a movie called A Man Escaped by Robert Bresson. The entire point of the movie is it's about a prison break, and the guy escapes because it's in the title. So the whole point of the movie isn't, is he going to escape? The point of the movie is, how does he do it? What's going to happen? And I think it's the same for this movie. That I think people are expecting it to be, okay, this is going to surprise me. What's going to happen? Rather than, this is a gangster movie. I know what's going to happen, but I want to see how it happens.
Yeah.
And I think how it happens and the sort of routes it takes into acknowledging some modern issues of race and intersectionality and subverting the whole morality of the gangster film is an interesting journey.
This movie was super episodic, and I wish it was just longer to connect everything.
Yeah.
I wish
to see it as a TV series.
Yeah, like a TV series maybe. It was written by Dennis Lehane, who wrote Shutter Island, Mystic River, and Gone Baby Gone, which are 3 great movies. I think Gone Baby Gone, Mystic River are a little better. But Shutter Island's still awesome. Like, he gets great directors for his movies. Ben Affleck, Martin Scorsese, and
Scorsese, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Did Affleck do Gone Baby Gone?
He did.
Yeah,
he did it with his brother. And this was, out of those movies, this was the weakest of them.
But
that's like saying that is the worst of a prime rib steak. It's like
saying Beyond Thunderdome is the worst Mad Max movie.
And it's awesome.
It's Beyond Thunderdome is fun, it's enjoyable, it's just not as good as the other ones.
So, I definitely recommend this movie, and I think this movie needs more love because it is losing to The Bye Bye Man, and that makes me a little sad.
There's some critical opinions I really disagree on, but there's some critical opinions I've read that most of the cast doesn't work. And I think this is a really good ensemble
cast. An amazing cast. Elle Fanning, Brendan Gleeson, who should have been in it more because he was...
Yeah, he plays...
Gotta love that guy.
He's mostly in there for episode 1, but he does really well. You got... Who else we got?
Zoe Saldana.
Zoe Saldana. She does pretty well. Chris Cooper as a major character. This chief of police. Chris Cooper is really good, but he's Chris Cooper. He's pretty much good in everything he does.
I guess Miguel is in the movie. Musician. I don't listen to him, but if you like Miguel, bam, you got Miguel in the movie.
Plus, you've got a bunch of
Chris Cooper.
Ton of supporting characters.
Chris Cooper. Chris Cooper's in it.
Yeah, I just mentioned that.
Oh, did you? I misheard.
Still, Chris Cooper is pretty fantastic in this movie.
Yeah,
the visuals are also really done. It's shot by Robert Richardson, the guy who does a lot of work for Scorsese and practically shoots everything that Quentin Tarantino does now. So he's a very distinctive director of photography, and he brings some really interesting style to this. There's some good use of color in this film.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Ben Affleck's suit gets whiter and whiter throughout the movie. Like it just starts out black, turns gray, then turns white as he becomes more and more corrupt.
I don't know if it's him becoming corrupt. It felt like
He
more of
becomes-
him trying to redeem himself as he comes closer to redemption.
Well, at the beginning of the movie, when he was this is a topic. This is off topic, but at the beginning of the movie, when he was like a normal, just a crook, he wore all black, and then by like when he was right before he was the redemption parts, he was wearing all white, kind of like a kind of remind me of Scarface, maybe like late Scarface. So watch this movie is
Yeah, a warning though. The endings, there's some stuff in the endings. There's a final twist. I'm not going to talk about this because I want to see the movie, but there's a final twist to this movie that I think you liked. I just thought felt a bit cruel.
I mean, it's a cruel movie. It's not like a super happy movie.
I don't necessarily feel it's cruel so much as it's honest. It's dark. Yeah, it's fairly bloody, but there's kind of interesting redemptive qualities to it. That it goes positive in places where you'd think it'd be negative. Like, you'd think that Elle Fanning's character, this preacher, would essentially be portrayed as a charlatan and someone who doesn't know what they're doing, but she's portrayed really respectfully, which I thought was interesting. I think the whole movie is very much honest, that it has very good intentions about acknowledging the fact that these issues exist in the world of race and classism and trying to find a way around that.
Yeah, the fact that it's the fact that's in Florida definitely adds to it, because that is a fairly divided, has been a fairly divided state, hasn't it?
And it acknowledges the issues and tries to find a way around them. That's interesting. So I think it's honest. I do think it is only cruel, though, at the ending. Because after all of these characters in the film have been through so much, the movie just throws one final thing at them that just feels cruel. Then again, there's this theme of... There's supposed to be a theme of almost karma running through the movie. That at the start of the movie, Brendan Gleeson tells Ben Affleck that what you do comes back to you, not in the way that you expect. And then they kind of ignore that. And then at the end of the movie, it comes back with a vengeance in just this act that kind of... this ending twist that kind of annoyed me.
If that will... I mean, okay, well, I'll ask you after this, because this is a spoiler. But, all I have to say is, if this, I'm looking forward to Ben Affleck versus the KKK feature-length movie, just focusing on that, because that was the most interesting part. Just do because that was intense. So thank you for listening. And have a good day.
Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave anything in the comments if you want to see us improve or if there's anything you want us to tackle. And take care.